Hey everyone, it's Cyrus Khajvandi. Really happy to be back in Tokyo. I was actually last out here a couple weeks ago and just came in around 4 a.m., so I'm really pumped right now. So today I'll be talking a little bit more about Mobius and kind of giving a bit of a retrospective, how we started, what problems we were trying to solve, and where is the current state of the entire blockchain space and industry, and some exciting things that we're working on in the future and where we think the industry will actually end up going. So by and large, what we're trying to do is something really simple. Just simply create an environment where businesses can easily connect to accept blockchain-based payments right now. Because as you know, and you could see it all over the place in memes, that a lot of people in the space, even veterans, are actually just holding on to their cryptocurrencies. And there's just a lot of speculation and trading, but not much spending for goods and services right now. And part and parcel with that problem is it's pretty hard to use. And in addition to that, there's some scalability issues at play as well. So the first flappening, this story goes back way back when. So when we started Mobius, we wanted to solve a real problem. It was actually a problem that we had ourselves, and that's basically how can we easily integrate a token to be used in a game or any other application for that matter. In this case, it was Flappy Bird. Really simple game. I'm sure a lot of you have played it. We wanted to just be able to accept payments on Flappy Bird, or as my co-founder and I, we wanted to basically bet each other like, oh, this is like a while ago last year, like 20 Ethereum, who can get the highest score, right? Maybe a simple conditional statement like that. So we wanted to make it super easy for anyone, regardless of skill or domain expertise, to really start accepting blockchain-based payments in their app or online business. So part of what we did with Mobius as part of the MVP was create basically a Stripe for blockchain. And that was our earliest product that we launched in the summer of 2017. And part of the core problems that we were really trying to solve were just minimizing the number of servers needed to run an app on blockchain. I mean, we scoured the internet for really simple sources, and we think we could have made this a lot easier for everyone, especially people without any real programming expertise. So we just basically wanted to dramatically reduce the amount of code needed to integrate a token in an application. And interestingly enough, we started with the ERC20 standard, but then we ran into some scalability problems there as well. Also, running your own Ethereum node, for instance, can be really hard, inconvenient, and expensive for many early developers, especially for those just getting into Solidity or into blockchain to begin with. And also monitoring the Ethereum network for incoming token transfers can take a really long time, as many of you might have experienced. So we wanted to reduce this cognitive load for anyone or any business trying to accept blockchain payments. So we started out with Flappy Bird, we got it to work, and then we're like, okay, we have our product. What's next? It was actually really fortunate, actually. So this is my co-founder, David, and Jed McCaleb, approached us. He heard about the product that we put out, and he wanted to be one of our earliest backers. And we were completely, starstruck and completely shocked because we saw this as the first early sign of external validation, because we view Jed as actually not only a pioneer in blockchain space, but actually a genius. He created Mt. Gox in the summer of 2010. Does anyone know what the price of Bitcoin was back then? That's right, 5 or 6 cents per Bitcoin. He started Mt. Gox so early, it was only 5 to 6 cents. And after that, he created Ripple and then Stellar. And we are really fortunate to have Jed not only on our advisory board, but being one of our earliest backers when we were basically relatively unknown. He really believed in the team and the mission and our really early MVP with Flappy Bird. on our DApp Store. So he really backed our vision of creating an environment that really made B2C and B2B crypto commerce possible on blockchain using Mobius. And we're really thankful for him for believing in us. So I want to start off with a really quick story. This is Flarkos. He's a self-taught developer from Lagos, Nigeria in East Africa. Over there, the average salary is less than $4,000 a year. And nearly 1/3 of the population in Nigeria is actually involved and employed by agriculture. What's remarkable of Flarkos is he's actually one of our earliest adopters. And when we built Mobius, it was basically launching out a really simple MVP of developer tools. We didn't know who would use it for what or when. And he actually did something pretty remarkable. So what Flarkos did was he created a simple DApp in our DApp Store, Stellar Ball, using Mobius in his spare time in between odd jobs. And he was able to easily accept cryptocurrency-based payments from players all over the world without any kind of restriction or really big blocker or intermediary. So, and he was able to do this for the very first time. What's even more astonishing is that he actually was able to sell over 18,000 tickets of his game, Stellar Ball, in the platform. And he was already, by then he already surpassed the average yearly income for people in his homeland. And we were just completely enthralled and shocked by this. And he took it a step further. He even went as far as to expand his app to appeal to our growing Chinese customer base. And this is an example of it right there. He actually started catering in Mandarin to our Chinese customers who own Mobius. So this is really fascinating. So Flarkos did all of this without a bank, without funding, and without a development team. He did this. This was all just a dream for him, and an internet connection, and his raw talent and determination. That's all he had. And I think this is a really telling and early example of what blockchain can do to empower not only developers, but entrepreneurs all over the world. And we're really honored that Mobius our really basic Stripe-like API at the time played a really small role in facilitating these early B2C payments over blockchain with lightning speed. And yeah, pun intended, because we're actually integrating Lightning into our network, hopefully by the end of 2018. So these payments can happen even faster and cheaper. And since then, the DApp ecosystem has grown a little bit. But this is a very static example and harkens back to our MVP that we launched last year. But since then, we've noticed a lot of strong engagement from our early adopters. They keep iterating on the products they've launched, and they're developing things on mobile, and they keep reinvesting in their products. And it just ties it all back. Why? Because they can use Mobius to easily integrate any token into their existing apps for payments right now, or use it for smart contracts. And this is part of the growing ecosystem in our DApp Store. So just a little bit of background here. So co-founded the company with my friend David. We've known each other since our days in undergrad at Stanford. David, after he finished his computer science degree at Stanford, he then went on to his master's in comp sci at Stanford and then dropped out. And then he told me he was going to law school at Harvard. And I told him, why would you do that? That's such a waste of time. But I take it all back now. It actually wasn't. It actually really helped us craft our thesis when launching our token sale, where we actually had a fully functional product, MVP, before its place. And before that, David was also a Y Combinator alumnus. And Monis Raman, also a fellow friend from Stanford, left left his PhD program in computational mathematical engineering to join our team as well early on to help us develop our PSOP and patent pending tech. I'll talk a little bit more in a couple of slides. So just wanted to touch briefly on the level of growth that we've had. This year has gone by very quickly. We're completely humbled that we were able to bring in over $39 million in revenue from our product, brought in through our token sale. And we basically ended up selling out within 2 hours of our launch. And we actually did have technical hiccups. There was so much international demand, it actually brought down several of our servers. So we tried to pick out the most inconvenient times for everyone to have the sale. So like 1 a.m. Beijing time, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in the middle of the week. And since last year, actually, we sold a little bit of equity. So people buying, investing in our company actually bought equity. Anyone purchasing our token itself, that's just our product. So Camp One Ventures is a very early investor in our equity. And we're the second blockchain company in their portfolio, aside from Ripple. And they were extremely early investors in Ripple as well. And we have several other investors in our equity as well, including a hardware manufacturing company in Shenzhen. So when we're looking at blockchain today and where we want it to be tomorrow, it's sort of just building up a framework for how we want things to scale. So our thesis really revolves around the fact that people just rarely transact on blockchain because it's just too expensive, too slow, and too insecure. And we have a lot of great companies in the space trying to solve different aspects of these problems. And when we actually started building Mobius on top of the Stellar Consensus Protocol, one of the things we thought critically about was just fees. Fees on the network, security. 99% of the ecosystem today is built on top of an ERC20 standard. And I think a lot of tokens out there are built on this. And there's just massive attack surface. You've seen it in countless examples of attacks from Parity Wallet to even close to the genesis of Ethereum itself, where they had their own hard fork, Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. And slow, basically only 7 transactions per second, and it's getting slower because of network congestion. So we all see these as encumbering factors for global adoption. And we were playing games in the very beginning and developing games on blockchain. And we thought the first mission critical app that can actually gain mainstream success will probably look like a game. And Jed thought the same thing too. In fact, Mt. Gox was originally Magic the Gathering online exchange. You see kind of a link between gamers and blockchain devs. And so we said, yeah, maybe the first breakaway success app is going to be a game. And this was summer 2017. And then come winter, we see these guys. How many of you here have played CryptoKitties? Okay, I see a few hands. How many of you are still waiting for your CryptoKitty to show up? Not very many. I've tried playing it. It's really fun, actually. But I think CryptoKitties is actually an excellent example of how a mission-critical app can actually fail to scale on blockchain on an ERC20 standard for those 3 key reasons: too slow, too expensive, and too insecure. In this case, CryptoKitties was just too slow and too expensive. And here's a graphical representation of that pain point for many of you consumers and for myself when they were trying to purchase the CryptoKitties. As you go down the time horizon, things just got really hairy, really expensive, and really slow. And if a toy application was able to bring down the entire Ethereum network and bring it to a crawl, how can you reasonably expect a business application with real-time needs and security to thrive on this network? So we were thinking critically about this back when it was deeply unpopular and relatively unknown, and we decided to go with SCP to develop and launch our product. And this is why. So where are we today in terms of platform costs? Well, let's look at another graph here. On the x-axis, you have average transaction time per second. On the y-axis, you have average transaction fees in dollars. And look where we are right here. We have the early leaders in the field, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. To me, Bitcoin already fulfills its long-term objective as being digital gold. It doesn't have to be that fast. It doesn't have to be that cheap to move around, because guess what? It's still better than gold, and it fulfills its role as digital gold for a high-density store of value. But then you have other platforms here that are also acting like money, and could very well be commodities, which I deem commodities, that have different features, like Monero. So over here, you can actually break it down. There's a dichotomy. You have more or less smart contracting platforms, and others that are just really used for sending money back and forth. So part of creating a sustainable blockchain ecosystem is really keeping the fees in check. That's really crucial. And fees have gone wild, as best epitomized by CryptoKitties. And so when we started building things out, we really looked at Ethereum really closely. In fact, our earliest integration is with Ethereum, so you can use Mobius to transact with ERC20 tokens, any of them. And we actually just settled on Stellar because not only was Jed really instrumental in that, but also our Stanford professor, David Mazieres, thought really critically about how to structure the consensus protocol, which we thought ultimately would be the winning component here, because not only were things really fast, it was the most production-ready platform to launch a consumer-facing application on blockchain today. And that's why we selected it. Other things that come close, so the fees are basically close to zero if you look at the y-axis for Mobius and even Stellar. If you look at Neo purportedly has something like that, but there have been recent reports from expert cryptographers and other computer scientists in the field that say that smart contract execution, for instance, on Neo can cost as much as $12,000. So there's a lot of questions about Neo too in the air. So comparatively speaking, Ethereum is very good, but there are already better production-ready platforms that are not a testnet, but actually live. And that's what you see today with Mobius and Stellar. So basically just reiterating the point, you need something cheap, fast, and secure to move things around on blockchain. And today, we were basically looking at going out the next level, which is creating, at a very nation level, a decentralized data marketplace on blockchain where smart contracts would actually consume live data and actually be able to spend it. So beyond blockchain-based payments, where do we go from here? So we really see longer term, the next decade, blockchain really being the new decentralized internet, not so much for peer-to-peer interactions so much, but as it evolves, it'll be more or less a decentralized internet for machines and even robots to facilitate a lot of automatic data transfers and also payments. So we started thinking about this, especially our head of research, Monis Raman, about what this would probably start to look like with crypto economic incentives in place. So one of our earliest patent submissions was for a universal proof of stake Oracle protocol. So basically what this is how do you get high quality data from the real world, and in this case, a Mobius Oracle, and send it to blockchain where it can be evaluated on a smart contract and sold to another contract. Well, you'd actually need to have an economic incentive in place to make sure the data is really high quality. So what would you do? You could possibly attach some kind of transaction insurance to that, where the Oracle itself would actually stake a unit of value, in this case, Mobius. So step one, smart contract chooses a Mobius oracle, and this choice making requires a smart contract to really trust the oracles to deliver an actual data on time and accurately and honestly. And then two, the oracle fetches the data from the data source and transmits it to the smart contract on blockchain. And then three, some smart contract would actually consume the data and then resolves the contract. And then from there, it can evaluate whether or not it's actually good quality. So what if there's actually a disagreement in this case between, say, one oracle and another in this data transmission? Well, you have certain models out there already today, but we actually think it's fairly flawed because the arbitration protocol is very centralized. It would be very much akin to having a king make the final decision on whether or not the data quality is actually accurate. And so this is the problem with over-centralization. This is an image of the Sun King, Louis XIV. I am the state, I am the law. So you don't want anything like this. It actually lowers security and requires a tremendous amount of trust. But blockchain inherently is a completely trustless environment with a lot of consensual exchange. And this actually would impede a lot of what's going on. So when we thought about architecting the PSOP, we actually wanted it to be more egalitarian and more robust to any kind of features. So centralized arbitration protocol, that would be more akin to IOTA today. So building on top of SCP, we use a federated Byzantine a model of consensus where if there's a disagreement between data and data that's being shown on the blockchain, then you'd actually have other oracles cross-checking it to make sure that the data is actually high fidelity. And it would actually make it much harder to transmit faulty data. And also, it would make it much, much harder as you add more oracles in this decentralized arbitration consensus protocol to actually collude. So they're basically cross-checking each other. So as you get more and more of these, it actually make it much more difficult and possibly ensure a greater chance of security. So this is just going back to the point of what makes Mobius a little bit different. Again, this is just a more detailed look at the fees and transaction times. Since we're built on top of SCP, the fees are near zero, and the average block time itself is really quick. And because we're actually built on a non-Turing complete platform, we have limited expressivity, but at the same time, security is really robust too because the attack surface is dramatically minimized. But that's actually a great feature of Ethereum and ERC20 based tokens because they have so much attack surface effectively that you can do a lot of interesting things. And that's not a knock on Ethereum, it's just the way it's designed. It's different design philosophies. But again, our concerns creeped back on January 10th, 2018 when we saw the average transaction fee just going sky high at $4.15 per transaction on Ethereum. And that's something that will very likely only trend upwards over time as the network continually gets congested. And it's actually a big if there can be a scalability solution developed for Ethereum on its roadmap. And as an early adopter of Ethereum, I really hope they can do this as well. So yeah, this is just circling back longer term on what we're doing with our PSOP. So basically, what we're focusing on right now is really payments. But if you think about it really abstractly, you're just pushing bits from point A to B. And it is fundamentally data at the end of the day. So it would be a really interesting problem to solve, which is the Oracle problem, connecting real-world data to blockchain. And using Mobius tokens will actually help enable that fidelity of the data transferred to blockchain in this model. And the final settlement could actually just be writing stuff to a smart contract to the blockchain, and then you can actually pick which cryptocurrency to actually finalize it. And I think one of the key things here in making things usable, not only for PSOP, but going back in the beginning for payments, is people are really afraid of volatility. And at the end of the day, people want to have the option to have a cryptocurrency that's devoid of this kind of volatility. And this is where all the talk of a stable coin comes into place. And that's actually a really interesting problem that we're looking at right now and solving with a fairly different approach than what we've seen others do. And it actually would be very complementary to what we already have right now, which is very much MVP. And when we're ready to release that, be very happy to share it. And this is just another example of where we could see things going, like a proof of sale, blockchain-based payments, not only leveraging PSOP and also our universal API protocol to make blockchain payments easy. And that's pretty much it. Thank you all.
Any questions for Cyrus from Mobius? We could still have time to probably take like a couple of questions. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, no, no, yes? Oh, there we go. Gentleman at the front, please.
Can I just ask without the mic?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I can also take questions outside, too.
Yeah, hold on. The guy's almost here. So everybody can hear the question as well. Thank you.
So one of the things you talked about was the costs of the transaction, right? And, is your cost lower because the network's not big enough yet? And like the other ones are quite complex and quite big, and so the cost will go up. So will your cost trend up? And are you saying that like for like, when you reach a certain level, you will be lower? And why do you think so?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So part of it is just the way the consensus mechanism is put in place. As you know, Ethereum and even Bitcoin itself, they're based on proof of work, right? Which is really, over time, gets more and more computationally expensive. Also, just setting up the mining equipment, the hardware is very expensive. So just keeping that process up over time, ironically, makes it more centralized because wealthier players or early adopters already have a huge delta, a huge advantage. And even the same argument can even be made there because you know, I think maybe Ethereum is overdue for its transition into Casper, which would enable proof of stake. Early adopters would also have a huge advantage there because they have, you know, most likely the largest allocation of Ethereum. So there's that's two things. That's fees and security, because if there's over-centralization, well then, you know, you have much more power in a consolidated group. So when we built Mobius on top of SCP, the consensus protocol is very much different, and so there's no mining. It's basically more of like, you can actually pick which nodes in your network that you want to trust. And trust is based on more of like a federated system, and it's much more secure because you can actually just get a quorum slice. And if there's a disagreement between different participants in the system, I mean, the transaction just won't go through. So it's a different, entirely different consensus mechanism, which is a core reason for why it's faster and cheaper.
So the follow-up, are you more likely to fail transactions? I guess, and I'm not an expert, so maybe I'm asking a stupid question. I guess, does it mean that you have more failures and then you try again because the time is
Oh, so no, I don't. So I don't think not at all. I don't think Bitcoin or Ethereum are failures. I actually think.
What I meant was because they are centralized.
Hold on. The mic's coming.
My bad. So because they're centralized, the transaction goes through, I guess, because you have enough computing power behind it. It's expensive, but it goes through. In your case, you're saying that you're picking certain nodes and you're choosing your cohort of, let's say, federated people will validate your transaction. In which case, if there is failure, will it fail more often, and therefore you'll have to try again and again, and therefore the cost goes up that way. There's more time to complete transactions because you're going light, if you may.
Yeah, you could basically, since it's on blockchain, you could see which nodes are more reputable, for instance. So it's kind of like ranked that way. So you can just pick the ones which have a much better history. So you can actually optimize your results. But really good question.
All right. Okay. I think that's it. Thumbs up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Cyrus.